Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajacharya Srimada's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBD Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajacharya Stotra Srimada's Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja Ki Jai Ananta Gauri Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shlahadadas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai Brihat Madanga Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gadamba. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 31, Text 26, and I'm also going to do 27. And I'll chant 26 on my own because it's the one I'm not going to really speak about very much. And 27 we'll do together. Okay? Śāyito śuci-paryaṅke jantuḥ svedaja-dūṣite neśaḥ kaṇḍūyane ṅgānām āsanotthāna-ceṣṭane. And the translation, well, I'll do the translation. Translation: laid down on a foul bed infested with sweat and germs, the poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from his itching sensation, to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. Purport: it should be noted that the child is born crying and suffering. After birth, the same suffering continues, and he cries. Because he is disturbed by the germs in his foul bed, which is contaminated by his urine and stool, the poor child continues to cry. He is unable to take any remedial measure for his relief. Okay, now 27, and we'll do this one together. Tudantyama tvacham damsa. Tudantyama tvacham damsa. Masaka matkunandaya. masaka matkunadayaha rudantam vigata gnanam rudantam vigata gnanam krimaya krimakam yata krimaya krimakam yata tudantyama tvacham damsa masaka matkunadayaha rudantam vigata gnanam krimaya krimakam yata. Vaishnavis. Okay. Tudanti, they bite. Atmatvacham, the baby. Sorry, whose skin is soft. Damsaha, gnats. Masakaha, mosquitoes. Matkuna, bugs. Adaya, other creatures. Rudantam, crying. Vigata, deprived of. Gnanam, wisdom. Krimaya, worms. Krimakam, a worm. Yata, just as. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby, whose skin is tender, just as smaller worms bite a big worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly. Purport. The word vigata gnanam means that the spiritual knowledge which the child developed in the abdomen is already lost to the spell of Maya. Owing to various kinds of disturbances and to being out of the abdomen, the child cannot remember what he was thinking of for his salvation. It is assumed that if a person acquires some spiritually uplifting knowledge, circumstantially he is prone to forget it. Not only children, but also elderly persons should be very careful to protect their sense of Krishna consciousness and avoid unfavorable circumstances so that they may not forget their prime duty. Om Ganatimananda Shah Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Okay, so please raise your hand if you know who Amala Bhakta Maharaj is. Raise your hand. Okay, that's most of us here in the room, okay? Okay, so raise your hand again if you think that the reason we're not seeing him very much in the last few months is because he doesn't like Krishna anymore. Raise your hand. Now, I'm trying to make a real obvious example here that when you get older, things get harder. That's on one level, the point that's being made here. Elderly persons should be very careful to protect their sense of Krishna consciousness and avoid unfavorable circumstances, so they may not forget their prime duty, because you get older and things change. Your body changes. You can't do the same things that you used to do. So the activities you used to do to kind of foster your Krishna consciousness, like coming to the temple and participating in the program, they become more difficult to do, and in some cases impossible. And that's a disadvantage. That's making it harder. I know, like myself sitting here, if I wasn't able to come to the morning program, I'd still do whatever I could at home, but you get special energy when you can come to the temple. It's not the same. At least that's my experience. I could be sitting and chanting in my room, and it's okay, but when I come here, it's like, whoa, you get like a special dose of energy, dose of mercy by coming to the temple. That's what the temple's for. Okay, so you're at a disadvantage. In one sense, okay? Now here's another question. It's a little trickier, and you got to think about this. Raise your hand if you think Amala Bhakta Maharaj doesn't like Krishna anymore, and it's his fault. That's a little I'll probably have to explain that question. He doesn't like Krishna. He doesn't like Krishna anymore, but would you hold him responsible for that? Would it be his fault? It's a little tricky question. I'll explain what I'm getting at with that. Okay, so there's the brain, there's the mind and the brain, and they're not the same thing, the mind is not what the brain does. There's a difference, and I'll explain. Okay, so say somebody takes too much alcohol, or too much, marijuana, or some other kind of intoxicant. What happens? You drink too much alcohol. You have like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 beers. What happens? Yeah, you become inebriated. You become drunk, and you don't behave the same way. Because you don't think the same way. You don't feel the same way. In other words, it has an effect on your brain, right? The alcohol has an effect on your brain, and you can't behave the same way. You don't think the same way. You don't feel the same way. And consequently, thinking, feeling, willing, you don't behave the same way. Okay, what about if somebody comes and they bop you on the head with a mallet? Everyone knows what a mallet is. It's kind of like a hammer, but it's a little bit softer. It's not metal, it's wood. What happens? Somebody bops you on the head with a mallet. You're dazed, right? You might even go unconscious. They might knock you out, or minimally you're going to be like, Or if somebody, with a boxing glove gives you a right cross to the head, it affects you, you see? So the point I'm making is that the brain influences, it's not the mind, there's the difference between the brain and the mind, but there's definitely a connection there. And if the brain is adversely affected by circumstances, it's going to negatively affect our ability to be Krishna conscious, right? Yeah, so, and that's what happens when you get older. I lost my train of thought there for a second, but by Krishna's mercy I got it back. That's what happens when you get older. The brain gets older. Just like, it's like when your body gets older, your muscles get weaker. Your bones get brittle. Your muscles get weaker. Your circulation's not as good, etc. And your brain also, which is just an organ. It's not the mind. The mind is fine. It's the cloud, as we heard yesterday from Shirokuro Gopinath's class. But the brain is an organ, and it gets weaker. You can't remember as well, right? You can't discriminate as well. Yeah. Now, he's exaggerating? No. elder abuse. What do you think they have that term for? Elder abuse. Everybody knows about that. It's quite a common phenomenon in society. Elder abuse means people are aware that when people get older, you have to protect them more, just like children, because they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable to physical abuse, emotional abuse. Because they can't fight back. This is like not 100% of the time, but in general, older people, you get weaker. So you can't fight back. You can't, if somebody's trying to physically abuse you, or even emotionally, insult you or call you bad names or something like that. Or another very prominent one is financial abuse of elders. That people take advantage of them because they know they're not as sharp and they're not kind of, so they try to take advantage of them. So that's there, you see. So, and the reason, once again, is that as you get older, it's harder. You can't function. You can't function to the same. You're not at the top of your game. It's not optimum level, and people can take advantage of that. And that's why it's mentioned here that Prabhupada said elderly persons have to be very careful to protect their sense of Krishna consciousness and avoid unfavorable circumstances. Now, who's the number one elder abuser? Maya. Maya is the number one elder abuser. You see, people are there for sure, that's there. But the number one elder abuser is Maya herself. And she's ruthless. She's abusing everybody. She's going to abuse every person as they get older. She's going to take away their strength and their memory and their this and their that, leaving me with nothing. So Maya is the number one elder abuser. And so we have to be careful. And here, Prabhupada says you have to avoid unfavorable circumstances. So in our case, we're trying to advance in devotional service and progress towards pure devotional service. So, and as we get older, we have to be careful. And one of the number one things we have to be careful about is to stay out of Maya's territory. Avoid Maya. And I'll give you an example, like Gajendra, okay? So Gajendra, he went into the water, right? Now, elephants do that, but that's like, he was asking for trouble in one sense. Elephants, you can't blame me. Okay, elephants going to, but he was asking, why? Because he's in the crocodile's territory. He was in the crocodile's territory. So what do you expect? You go in the crocodile's territory, and if he was on the land, the chances of the crocodile attacking him and getting him while he was on the land would be like a teeny fraction of the chances of him being attacked like he was when he went in the water. See? So the analogy is we have to stay out of Maya's territory. As devotees, now I'm talking. We have to stay out of Maya's territory. And the number one Maya's territory that we have to stay out of is mentioned in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 17, chapter 19, text 17. And the verse goes like this. Matra svarsha duhitrava na bibakshak. Well, let's see. Matra svarsha duhitrava, I can't remember the second line. Balavan indriyo gramo vidvam samapi karshati. The translation is, woman is compared to fire and man is compared to a butter pot. Therefore, a man should avoid associating even with his own daughter in a secluded place. Similarly, he should also avoid association with other women. One should associate with women only for important business and not otherwise. Purport. Short purport. Prabhupada says, if a butter pot and fire are kept together, the butter within the pot will certainly melt. Woman is compared to fire, and man is compared to a butter pot. However advanced one may be in restraining the senses, it is almost impossible for a man to keep himself controlled in the presence of a woman, even if she is his own daughter, mother, or sister. Indeed, his mind is agitated even if one is in the renounced order of life. Therefore, Vedic civilization carefully restricts mingling between men and women. If one cannot understand the basic principle of restraining association between man and woman, he is considered to be an animal. That is the purport of this verse. So that's the number one unfavorable circumstance that devotees have to, and it applies to men and women. It's equally disadvantageous that one has to avoid, because that'll put you in Maya. Now somebody might say, and even Prabhupada raised this point. Okay, I've heard him in the lecture. Prabhupada raised this point. Somebody might go, come on, that's kind of like taking it a bit too far. One's mother, sister, daughter? Nah. But Prabhupada quotes the Sanskrit, vidvam sam api karshati. Even, and Prabhupada, supporting that, he says, even a man of vidvam means that like somebody who's highly advanced in knowledge and learning, even them, not what to speak of an ordinary person, even somebody who's highly advanced in knowledge and learning, that they're susceptible to that. What? Lord Brahma, yes, the example, Lord Brahma. So even somebody who's highly advanced in knowledge is susceptible to that, right? So, now, but somebody might make the additional, raise the additional doubt, but I've associated, I've talked with women, and I've, sat and chit-chatted and did this and that, and I didn't fall down. Well, okay, you might not have physically fallen down, but there's a principle involved, and the principle is this: when somebody associates, if a woman associates with a man, or a man associates with a woman, not in the service mentality, but in an enjoying mentality, yeah, it might not go anywhere, it might not lead to any kind of physical interaction, but you're contacting the mode of passion. You're contacting the mode of passion. So as soon as you step outside, the instructions of the spiritual master, then you're contacting the mode of passion or the mode of ignorance. It's just like, in that pastime with Lord Ramachandra, when we're in the forest, and Sita wanted the golden deer, and so Ramachandra went off to try to get the deer. He knew something was fishy, but anyway, she was insisting. So then Ravana came and then so now I'm remembering the story. Okay, so Ramachandra went off to try to get the deer. It was actually Maricha, and then Lakshman stayed back to protect Sita, and then they heard cries, Lakshman, from a distance they heard cries, and Sita thought, oh, this is Ram calling out, he needs help. So she told Lakshman, okay, you got to go, please help Ram. And he said, no, I can't. I got to stay here. I was told to stay here and protect you. That was my instruction from Ram. And then Sita, she started saying, oh, you just, you want to stay here because you want to enjoy me. She kind of said some things that made it very difficult for him to stay there. I can't remember the exact words she used. But so reluctantly, he said, okay, looks like I gotta go and try to protect Ram. But so he drew a line, he drew a circle, Lakshman Rekha. That's what that means. Lakshman Rekha is the Sanskrit. And he said, okay, just stay within this circle, don't go beyond the line here, and you're going to be okay. Okay? And he did it. And he went off. Okay. Then Ravana came, and he was disguised as a sannyasi, and he tricked her. He tricked her, and he got her to come outside the line, the protective circle, and he got her. Okay? So getting back to the point now. So the instruction of the spiritual master is a Lakshman Rekha. You familiar with that phrase? You've heard it, right? Somebody from India has heard that. I heard Prime Minister Modi use that line, that phrase. Anyway, so that's the Lakshman Rekha, the instruction of the spiritual master. And when you kind of go outside that, when you deviate from the instruction of the spiritual master, you're not protected. You're susceptible to the becoming contaminated by the modes of material nature. See? Now, what happens when you contact the mode of passion? As I said, once again, even there's no physical thing. In people in the mode of passion, one of the other symptoms of the mode of passion is you become proud. You become proud. You become puffed up. when you're being influenced by the mode of passion. And everybody's probably heard that expression, pride comes before a fall. Yeah, pride comes before a fall. See, so you deviate from the instruction of the spiritual master, and you become influenced by the mode of passion, affected, contaminated by the mode of passion. It makes you proud, puffed up, and then that will affect how you interact with other devotees. Because if you're proud and you're in the association of the devotees, then you're more susceptible to commit a Vaishnava aparad. You see, and that's called hati mata. And hati mata means mad elephant offense. Sorry. And that can destroy your devotional creeper. I don't know if I can't remember if I've heard it said permanently, but you know what an elephant does when it gets in a garden or something like that. It just, all the plants, and it just completely ruins the whole thing. So that's like that. So that's a point there. Now, is this supported in the Shastra? In any place? Well, I think, yeah. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's that verse, Śāyito vishayan pumsam, sangat teshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kama krodha pajayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses. Now, once again, there's gross sense objects and there's subtle sense objects. We all know what the gross sense. Pride, desiring honor. That's a subtle sense object. You see, so when you're contemplating, because you've contacted the mode of passion, and you're thinking about how you want to be honored more, you want more prestige, this and that, you're contemplating that you develop a lust for that, and when that's not satisfied, you become frustrated, you become angry, you kind of, see, it affects your behavior, and you're not able to be trinadapi sunichena tarodapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. You're not able to be humble, and be more tolerant than a tree and more, lower than a blade of grass like that. You're not able to behave like that, and so you're going to get into trouble. It's just a matter of time. Something's going to happen. You're going to, So that's a point. So as devotees, we have to be careful. And this is, well, actually, everything I've said up till this point is definitely true for older people, and it's true for everybody. It's true for all devotees. We have to. We're all kind of, susceptible to that. Now, why it's pointed out here in this verse, elderly people particularly are mentioned, that should be very careful, is because when you get older, if you make a mistake, if you blow it, it's harder to make a comeback. It's harder to make a comeback. In other words, say something goes wrong, okay? Devotee can say, just muster up all their determination and go, okay, I did that, I was stupid, but now I'm going to get serious again, sincere again, and you got the determination, and determination, Prabhupada, I heard him say, it's a physical thing, ultimately, it's a material thing, but you don't have as much determination, and it's harder when you get older to muster up that determination if something goes wrong. So what's advised is, just like what's advised when people retire, okay? When people retire, they stop working, they stop earning. They're not earning their income like that. What's strongly advised for older people in the material world is that they should protect their capital. You've heard that expression? Protect your capital. In other words, the money you've saved through whatever means, you should got to protect that, because you can't earn any more. There could be inflation, and that means the money, the $1 million that you had doesn't have the buying power of $1 million 10 years later. And also, as you get older, this could be unseen medical expenses, and you get the idea, right? So it's very much advised that older people should protect their capital, because they don't have the same earning capacity. They can't come back. If something goes wrong, they can't come back like a younger person who's working, who's got plenty of energy and plenty of resources and so forth and so on. So it's the same thing. Once again, it's an analogy. In devotional service, an older person should protect their devotional capital, okay? Because it's harder to come back. When you're younger, you can I think that's a valid point, okay? Now, somebody might say, well, okay, yeah, but where's the example of that? What about Prabhupada? Prabhupada didn't seem to be holding back or trying to protect his capital, right? Prabhupada was just he as he got older, he just kept more risk. You know, he took more risk and more sacrifice. And where's the example from Prabhupada of protecting his capital? Well, Prabhupada didn't try to protect his capital. But Prabhupada was in another category. He's in another category, right? I'm going to read you something about that that'll help us understand about that. So this is an excerpt from a lecture where Prabhupada initially is making this point about, you know, how one has to be careful in the association of the opposite sex in a non-devotional way. But then he goes on, he says, now, Haridas Thakur, at the dead of night, a woman came before him, and she was sitting, she was chanting. So according to this restriction or injunction, he has committed wrong, Haridas Thakur. He has committed wrong because he was, then Prabhupada goes, no, he has not committed wrong because he was trying for her benefit. He was sitting there not with the purpose of sense gratification. He was sitting with that woman with the purpose of converting her for self-realization. He had no other intention. His only intention was, quote, well, this poor creature has come to me, never mind whatever her intention is, and if I'm elevated, if I have any relationship with my Supreme Lord, I must do something good for this poor creature, so that her life may also become successful. End quote. That was his intention. He had no other intention. Therefore, naiva tasya kritena arta. That's from the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada, this is an excerpt from a Bhagavad Gita class. So Prabhupada concludes by saying, therefore for him there is no restriction. There is no restriction. You see? So, you know, if somebody's on that level, yeah, then there's no restriction. You don't have to worry. Like Narada Muni. Narada Muni was on that level. So, you know, when the demigods were trying to, they were dragging, remember? They were dragging the wife of Hiranyakasipu and then to some place. And Narada Muni appeared on the scene and he said, hey, what's going on here? What are you guys doing, you know? And they said, oh, well, this is the wife of Hiranyakasipu. She's got his son in her womb, and we're going to wait till he, you know, they weren't going to kill her, but we're going to wait till he's born, and then we're going to kill him. And Narada Muni said, no, wrong. He said, actually, in her womb is a great devotee. Narada Muni was a recognized authority, so, you know, they listened to him. He's a great devotee. And they, really? Okay. And he said, okay, look, just I'll take her, I'll take care of her, and you guys are okay. Just, you know, go about your business. And they just, okay, because he was Narada Muni. So he took her back to his ashram. He had her. I mean, what to speak of a Haridas Thakur? That woman came and while he was chanting, and you know, just a couple hours. Narada Muni, he had Hiranyakasipu's wife living with her in his ashram. I don't know for how long. I don't think it's ever explicitly stated. But like, you know, what's with same point. He was so elevated that he's beyond restriction. See? So, you know, if somebody's on that level, okay, then there's no restriction. But if you're not, then we got to be, you know, we have to know where we're at. We have to know where we're at. If you're a Narada Muni, a Haridas Thakur, or Srila Prabhupada, then okay, you know, congratulations, do your thing. But if you're not, then you have to behave, you know, act accordingly. Analyze and understand where you're at and behave accordingly. People have this expression out in the world today, it's all good. And then it is all good. And whatever you do, however you have to proceed in devotional service in order to advance, protect your capital, if that's what you need to do, or advance, that's good, because it's all devotional service. So, you know, somebody might be able to, like some of the advanced spiritual masters in our movement now, they have so many female disciples, and they talk with them, and they can do it. They're on that level, you know. And for some of us who maybe, you know, lesser, we have to be more careful, and be more cautious. But whatever you have to do to advance in devotional service, and if necessary, protect your devotional capital, that's good. Now, actually I have some more points, but I'm going to stop because I want to take time for questions and comments, even though I had a few more points I would like to make. Okay, so, question, Rabindranath Prabhu, or comment, whatever.
Yeah, this is a technicality. You were mentioning about the pastime of Ramachandra and how Lakshman told Sita to stay in within the circle, but that's not in the Valmiki Ramayana. It's mentioned in the Tulsidas Ramayana, which probably mentioned different things about, one of which that the author propagated the idea of a birthright like that.
A birth? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so it's
yes,
not...
one born in one's a Brahmin just because he's born in a Brahmana's family. So that pastime isn't in the Valmiki Ramayana.
Okay. Yep.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would initiate female disciples through a partition, so he wouldn't even see them if he initiated female disciples. So he's clearly one of these elevated souls. Why do you think he was displaying such behavior?
Well, different advanced devotees show different examples, you know. Lord Chaitanya also was obviously beyond all restrictions, but just to show an example, he had women, I don't know if he had female, I don't think he had any female disciples, but women had to pay obeisances from 9 yards away. And the famous pastime with Bhaktisiddhanta is that Adikeshava, you know, his Obiel Kapoor, his wife was there, and they were like having a darshan, and she said, "Oh, I'd like to talk to you." And he said, "Yeah, sure, you could speak, you know." And she said, "No, in private." And he said, "Oh no, I can't do that." And Prabhupada would elaborate upon that. So she was like a granddaughter in age, and she was the wife of his disciple, you know, but he wasn't willing to do that because it, you know, wasn't the proper. So, but you know, he wouldn't. I mean, we wouldn't have been affected, but that's what he showed that example. That's how careful he was. Yeah. You want to finish up? Or?
I just wanted to follow up and ask, why do you think it's kind of a touchy subject to instruct people on this kind of etiquette when it comes to, you know, kind of behaving a little more chaste with the opposite sex? Trying to like institute these things in our society, increase this culture. Why do you think it's like a touchy subject if it's in the Shastra so much?
Let me think about that.
When Srila Prabhupada came to the West, he was seeing the behavior of the Western culture, and he was accepting his daughters, female disciples, coming to. While in India, those, you know, some saintly persons, sadhus, some of them criticize Srila Prabhupada. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, okay, so that's good. Thank you for asking that question, and that leads into the answer to your question. Different culture. Western culture is like diametrically opposite to Vedic culture. It's diametrically opposite, you know, and it's a different purpose. Vedic culture is to help you, you know, get out of the cycle of birth and death and go back to Godhead. Western culture's, you know, focused on we are this body and maximize your sense gratification, because when you're dead, it's lights out, it's over. So, you know, just see, so it's two diametrically opposite kind of worldviews and cultures based upon the worldview, and that's why. Yeah.
Now,
you want to finish?
So now, there's a saying that out of sight, out of mind, and as a consequence, I don't know if this may be the reason, but some other groups, even, you know, the Catholics, many other groups, they instituted the monasteries where there's no women, they live separate. Also there's the nuns, in order to avoid or to actually pursue the path of spirituality more without being distractions. Sometimes maybe they were successful, or that's a different topic. But in our in the vision of Srila Prabhupada, he wanted, it's like an emergency. There's an emergency in Kali Yuga, I need help. I need women, I need men, anyone. So I think it's like the instructions given there are correct. The only thing that I can see also sometimes, because of immature understanding, the tendency is that sometimes people become too fanatical, and then the women get mistreated too. That's the other side of the coin. Mistreated meaning that men will not really mature understanding, oh, I don't want to talk to you, or like they get pushed out in the back. And that's the other side, although we're not talking about that now. But that's the risk.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the risk. So we have to be very carefully to analyze and see the circumstances. Like, for example, the Pujari room. Most of the service is the women. If we wouldn't have the women, I don't know how this will go on. So we need them. And some men squeeze there for some service. So yes, they have to be very careful, too much chatting or that, and might not be helpful.
Yeah, you're right. This is a big subject, and I'm kind of out of time.
It's not very easy.
That's to us. But it is a big subject, and there's a lot. And you raised a very good point, and there's a lot of things that could be and should be said to balance it out. But
I think an important issue is that Prabhupada has mentioned in different places that in order to wade through all these understandings, one has to see his life through, like philosophy and logic. We have to be logical, and if we're logical and we rely on philosophy, then one can actually swim through all of these difficulties and understandings that, sometimes are misused or misunderstood. So even for that matter, if one wants to be successful in any sphere, you have to use your intelligence in every circumstance. In other words, if you're in a pujari room, use your intelligence. Not that you have to, poo-poo Mataji, and you just have to use your intelligence. Who you are, what you are, and then act in that particular form, and don't go beyond that. So intelligence and philosophy are very important in the execution of devotional service, because you can't associate with Prabhupada every minute or your guru for every minute, but you have to be philosophical and you have to understand by logic how to execute that service. Sometimes people say, well, if I associate with devotees too much, I won't be. What am I going to do about my life? It doesn't mean that you become a brahmachari, but you just become philosophical, and through logic,
practical.
You're practical. So if a devotee is not philosophical and logical, there's going to be difficulties. There's going to be a lot of problems.
Yeah. So practicality based on logic and philosophy.
Yes, and understanding who you are and what you are. And then we can not have all these difficulties.
Yeah, thank you. That's really good. So raise your hand if you remember Ananda Kirtan. Yeah, we all do. So we'd like to take this opportunity to welcome his wife, Sharadiya Rasa, who just recently received second initiation from Indraduna Maharaj. And she's just here visiting for a few days, and she'll be joining Ananda Kirtan in Boulder, Colorado. She's a Sankirtan devotee as well. So I didn't recognize her over the last couple of days. So we would have welcomed her this morning, but I didn't recognize her until halfway through the japa period. So, Hare Krishna. Welcome from New York.
I also remembered one last thing.
Yeah,
I just remembered it. Prabhupada said that one has to use his intelligence and yogic practice, and then one can actually go on and be peaceful in life. So there is an intelligence factor and a practicing yogic activity as we do in Krishna consciousness. Those are important ingredients also.
Okay, thank you very much. Gunchard Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you. Thank you.